Welcome to another episode of the E24 LT1 swap. As you can see, we made a lot of progress off camera, and that's because I wanted to make this video very instructional about what I did and why. As you can see, I took the engine out. The engine has been taken out, and the reason I took the engine out before I do my first drive, you feel like I might be going backwards, but I'm not. I'm not going backwards, I'm going forwards. And here's why. When you take the engine out, it gives you an opportunity to really tune into the engine bay and start cutting all of those brackets that you don't need and start adding brackets that you definitely will need. It also gives me an opportunity to do things like this and clean up, almost tripped, and clean up all the wiring, as you can see. So let's go in, talk about the detail of each of these aspects of things that need to be done. Now, one of the things that came up was in regards to the radiator. When Charlie came over and took a look at the car, he had a couple of really good comments that I thought maybe I'll just, get to that point when I cross that bridge, right? But in this case, it's something that we need to address now, and that is the location of the radiator. Now, I did originally install the radiator basically right here, and I've already got my bolts here, so it just kind of bolts right on. The problem with that, however, is that the air inlet is going to be literally right here. And there's going to be nowhere for the air inlet to go since the mass airflow sensor needs to go right on that inlet. So I can't really bring it this way because of the brake booster, and I can't really bring it this way because of the plumbing, and all of the electronics are going to be over here. So the idea was to basically bring the radiator down to this level here, which should be doable. I just need to make sure that I can allow the opportunity to cut this guy out and make a nice little tray for it to sit on. Because if I get myself about 2 inches maybe, then that brings this down 2 inches, and that right there is my airflow path from here to a widened out version that goes right there, and I can probably find a part online that'll be able to mount that and adapt those two shapes together. Now it's time to see if it will fit. And if it does, then it's just a matter of bracing up everywhere else. All right, so this is definitely lower. You can tell it's lower, and it won't affect any of the other cooling systems, which is great. This part here is, about an inch. It's very thin, it's long, it's narrow, but it might just work to get me what I want out of this, and I think I can actually play with this now. So the plan here, from here on out at this point, is to redo the locations for the mounts, the holes, and then I think that the engine is going to end up coming up here, and this one's going to come up here. So yeah, so there's going to be some more work that needs to be done on the routing, but I think that this is going to be okay. So part of this plan, remember, is to brace this up now, because now that I've kind of compromised a little bit of this cross member, the structural integrity here has been compromised, I'm going to need to beef it up, presumably down below here, and make like another additional bracing structure just to keep these two frame rails in check. But I think that this is going to be okay. I'll make new holes here, and I think it'll be in good shape. So the radiator has been moved down now, basically like an inch, and it actually affords me a lot of lengthwise room here, but it's not very wide. So I'm looking up parts that can be used to transfer the shape, the profile, the contour rather, from here, and then go to a flat piece here that can go underneath. And the advantage here is that we can actually just put the mass airflow sensor right smack in here, right on the output or the input to the throttle body. So I think that this is actually going to work, and I'm going to move forward with this. And it's pretty strong, so it's not going anywhere. So let's move on to the next thing that we need to do to get this thing to first drive. Now that we've got the radiator lowered, we started working on the electronics. Now let's talk a little bit about where we've gone with the electronics since we came to it initially during the first start. Now as you can see here, I've revamped this quite a bit. I didn't give you all the details, but I'll talk about it now. I removed the homemade junction bar for the power 12 volts, and I ended up using an E26 junction bar here. This is actually pretty neat, and it's got a cover that goes over everything. It actually looks pretty cool. And basically what this junction bar connects is battery power. On the output here, it goes to the starter. This one down here is the alternator. This one here is to the fuse box that gets routed all the way around and goes straight to the fuse box and the ABS pump. And then I have a loop here that connects this block to this block, which is basically these two guys right here. And those two are also getting positive power. This guy here comes all the way out and goes to a fuse box. Now this fuse box is hard mounted to the chassis and it will remain that way. I modified this fuse box to have 6 fuses split on this side and 6 fuses split on this side. This side here is positive battery power, which is going to end up getting distributed through various amp fuses. These are called ATC fuses, the large blade fuses, and those go to the various places for the ECU and the other functions of the car. These 6 actually have a separate power source right here that's going to be switched power. That's going to be coming directly from the connector here on the fuse box. That's part of the wiring harness that goes from the fuse box all the way over to here. So this is going to be switched power, and this switched power turns on things on the DME that only turns on when you turn the key. So that's that. Over here is a ground terminal stud. This is a terminal board basically, and as you can see, I've already got 120 ohm resistor in between these two terminals, and that's basically going to be your CAN high and your CAN low. Some of this is going to go to the OBD2 port, some of it's going to go to the DME, some of it's going to go to the fuel pump control module, which is over here, so there's still some wiring there. This guy here is going to be a ground, and anything that requires ground is going to be going directly to that. The engine ground I also worked on as well. The engine ground is going to be connecting straight from the passenger engine bracket, and it's going to go directly to this location right here. Not on the subframe. Not on the subframe. It goes directly to the chassis, and I've floated it in this general area, and that corresponds to that right there, which is basically an M12 threaded nut that's been welded to the frame. Jesus Christ. All right, getting ready. All right. And action. Another thing that I did was also completely clean up this side of the engine bay, and in fact I have to do a little bit more because I have to take the fuse box out and the wiring harness and bring everything and snake it all over there. I need to do seam sealer on the welds, I need to grind some of the welds, I need to smooth all this out with a little bit of filler and get this looking really nice. Why? Because I'm getting ready for paint. And I want to paint this engine bay, the whole thing. I wanted to paint it, and I want it to look really, really nice. So when I do my final install, everything's going to look really pretty. So that means that everything needs to be, all the brackets need to be fully welded and complete. You don't want to do any welds, don't want to add any more brackets after paint, because then you're going to be removing paint, and you don't want to have to do that. So one of the things that I did was create my own clutch reservoir. As you can see, it has a tube that kind of goes down directly into the master cylinder, and this guy has a nice installed bracket right here, and it's nice and tough, it's accessible, it's perfect. Clutch reservoir is now done. And on the other side of the clutch master cylinder, from the brake line, from the output of the master cylinder, it goes through a brake line, goes through here, and it goes to a flex line, an AN4 flex line that goes directly into the TR6060 slave cylinder. Now let's talk about the details of the plumbing that comes from there to the slave cylinder and how we're going to install that. So this is the hard line that comes from the master cylinder output. It's a hard line and it goes into a custom adapter. Now this adapter here is basically a double flare to AN4 adapter, and that allows you to go from a brake line to an AN4. And this is an AN4 hard line. This has been pre-crimped from jegs, and it goes all the way around here, and it goes to an AN4 fitting, and that AN4 fitting goes to this special 90-degree TR6060 clutch adapter, and it has a little pin here, and the pin goes on there, and the O-ring is what makes a seal on the actual slave cylinder. This is basically the entire setup. As you can see, this guy kind of goes into here, and it connects to the location on the actual body that I had welded that specific bracket up. So this setup here for clutch slave and clutch master and just basically getting the clutch to work is 100% done. So let's bring the car up and talk a little bit about what I've done underneath the car, because I actually have done quite a bit underneath. I find that I actually work better without having to video every single thing that I do. Although it is a bit of a loss to the viewers who kind of get lost in what I'm doing and don't really see everything that I do, it is better for me in terms of progress. The progress that I make is immeasurably better when I'm not videoing every single thing that I'm doing. So I apologize in advance for not giving you all the detail, but I'm hoping that if you have questions, you can at least glean from what I'm doing from these videos, or perhaps if you want to ask me questions, you can always contact me through phone, website, or email. So, what did I do here? So one of the things that I have done is I had to make the front sway bar mounts removable. Now, what exactly does that mean? That means that these guys are the sway bar mounts, and this essentially has 3 holes that bolt directly onto the body. And those holes would allow the bottom part of the sway bar to install on. And the reason I did that, unfortunately, was because the frame rails of the E24 were exactly the same diameter as that of the distance from this side of the water pump to this side of the air compressor, the air conditioning compressor. It was literally to the millimeter. So you need to get the engine. So you literally need to get the engine exactly smack in the center, so when you lower the car on it, you're not going to get any type of binding on either side of the frame rails. Unfortunately, that presented a problem for the sway bar mounts, which actually made the frame rails essentially 1 inch narrower on each side, and that presented a problem with getting the engine to get installed into the engine bay. And you can't install it from above because the front frame rail, the front core support is not removable. So there was no other option for me than to make the sway bar mounts removable. And finally, one other thing that I did that was a pretty major improvement to this car is I beefed up the differential mounting. The differential mounting on this medium case diff was an original E24, which is all shares the same exact bolt pattern. But the E24 had a mount right above here, a single mount right on the frame rail here. What I've done was I've used the E30 mount, which has an ear over here. I've used Garagistics 80A mounts and Garagistics second ear mount to make that a little bit more versatile, and then I went fully custom. And that customization is basically having 2 bolts that go through, and it welded. I had the whole fabricated piece welded to the frame. So you have a lot of robustness here. And let's go on to the other side. You can see I have some triangular supports all along on the back side of here, so that is all maintained. It needs to be welded up a little bit more. But when I remove and drop everything, all of that is going to be beefed up anyway. But I am going to leave these stitch welds because I like the way that they look. They are functional, and you really don't need to fully weld everything because it's not going to add any measurable strength to the assembly by just doing a full-on weld. But I do have a lot of good strength in here, and this is going to work out really, really well. So this was a really good sub-assembly. I'm very happy I did, and I'm moving forward with it, guys. This is a 346 limited slip, which is basically the same size that came with the Camaro. So the TR6060 is mated very well to the 346 rear end, and obviously it's limited slip, and hopefully it'll be able to handle the 455 foot-pounds of torque that we give it. Now that you're fully caught up on where we are with this swap, the next stage here is going to be cleaning up and continuing to work on that engine bay and getting that bay primed and painted. We got to get that thing ready to go so we can put this engine back in the car and get ready for our first drive. So I think I've talked enough here, guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I hope you tune into to more videos that I do on this, because I'm gonna be starting to make some good progress on this in the next couple months. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. My name is Frank Macalusa from Garageaholic. As always, hats available on the website, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for supporting. Take it easy. Later.